Welcome to our April 15th Board of Selectmen meeting. Today's meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. As a preliminary matter, I'm going to confirm that all members of the board are present and can hear me. I am Bob Springett, Chair. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Jeffries.
Present.
Robin Hunter.
Present. Couldn't unmute myself.
Yeah. It's always a challenge. The staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Chris Dwelly.
I'm here.
Kate O'Brien.
Present.
Mona Zasulio.
Present.
I think that gives, does that give me everybody? I think that gives me everybody. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative.
Bob, I think you missed Felicia.
Oh, I don't actually think of her as staff. I think of her as an elected official.
Oh, okay.
Felicia Hoffman.
Present.
Okay, back to anticipated speakers. I'm not sure who is going to speak tonight, but I will ask Jim Rapetti.
Here.
Dave Haviland.
I'm here.
Okay, and Nick, please.
Yes, I'm here.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure thing. My name is Nick LaChance, president of New England Service Company, which is the owner of Colonial Water Company.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so now I am going to go to the agenda. And are there any citizen comments? Carol?
Thank you. I don't know whether you want to wait and discuss this after the first agenda item, but I'm here with a Water Resource Committee head on, and one on the committee that's very involved in putting together a water conservation, education, and communication plan for the town. And I just want to make sure, given the limited resources we have, and I assume the limited resources that Colonial has, that we find a way to work together synergistically to put together a robust and consistent messaging campaign to reach the 2/3 of the folks that are on private wells and the 1/3 that are on Colonial. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Item 1.1, Colonial Water Company has offered to display signage throughout their service area from Memorial Day through Labor Day to assist with the town's water conservation and education efforts. Nick is going to, I think, make a presentation.
Yes, and be a very brief presentation, but essentially, for ongoing activities and ways that we can help to curtail, really what it boils down to is irrigation, right, within the town. So, as we know, we have our restrictions that we put into place every year, which is watering twice a week for irrigation. Typically, it's on an odd even basis, with correlated with the street address number that each individual house has. And then we also restrict no watering between the hours of 5 and 9, as heavy watering during that time and pressure issues, which causes concerns and issues with everybody getting ready in the morning to get out to work. So those will all remain in effect. We'll continue to utilize our RAVE software notification system to again alert citizens and customers that water restrictions are in place. We'll continue to make the postings on our website, just as we always have. But we were thinking, really through Q1 this year about, what some additional steps that we could take, and this was one where we felt as though that it would be another, statement, but it would also be a visual aid. And in conjunction with the town, we thought it'd be a good opportunity to work in collaboration with the town. So essentially, what we've come up with is signage that we've identified, I believe, as a dozen areas around town, in conjunction again with some of the sandwich boards that we have that we put out around town. But this signage will be more of a permanent fixture with a pole that install into the ground versus a sandwich board that can blow over. So the signage will remind everybody of watering restrictions. I had previously sent the design of the sign over to Chris Wally, which I believe he shared with everybody and shared with the board. The only modification that we have to the sign that we had previously shown is just we'll display the website at the bottom of the sign, just indicating that the full requirements of watering restrictions will be indicated on the website. But other than that, I think it was just more just coming in tonight and making sure that we do have the blessing of the town to go ahead and charge forward with putting these signs up again, to help and to provide the consistent message that the water company has provided. And I think that we certainly need to have a conversation with the water study committee to make sure that we're all consistently giving the same.
Robert,
Sorry, Jerry, not yet.
I just wanted to respond to what he said, that's all.
No, we're gonna go through the general drill here.
Okay.
Nick, are you done?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you kind of broke up. You broke up at the end, and I wasn't sure.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. My connection here at home is a little unstable. But yeah, so again, it's a signage, a visual aid project that we want to get into place and implemented prior to Memorial Day and the start of really high season for irrigation.
Okay, I do remember that. I think last summer you guys put up some signage, and I think it had a pretty good effect on some of the residents in town. I thought you guys reported a fairly substantial drop in water usage. Is that correct?
Yeah, especially considering last year. Last year was just such a hot and dry season compared to the year before that. It certainly could have been worse. But the numbers were what the numbers were. I will be sending over to you, Chris, our annual statistics report that was just recently completed. So you'll have the actual numbers for all of 2020 here relatively soon.
Great, thank you, John.
Thanks, Bob. Mr. Chairman, three questions for Nick. Nick, number one, John Jeffries, Board of Selectmen. Nick, when can the signs go in the ground? Number one. Number two, if a homeowner like myself that has Colonial Water wants to put a sign in, let's say you have come up with 20 areas or 10 areas or whatever number of signs you're going to put in, can homeowners buy a sign? Can they post their own on their property? Number two. And number three, have you, from your experience, can you give us an assessment of what type of fines other towns can assess for non-compliance?
There are no
With
signs.
Sure. Let me just rephrase the questions. You broke up on question number two. Again, I'm gonna take the blame on that, on my unstable connection here. But I think the first question is when can the signs go in?
Yes.
Yeah. So with everybody's blessing tonight, we'll get moving on that here in relatively short order. It's April 15th. I would certainly suspect within the next 2 to 3 weeks we'll have those put in. Consistent with what the vendor's expectations are as well. But I would certainly think in the next 2 to 3 weeks we can get those put in for this upcoming season.
How many?
Option number 2 was relative to if individuals want to put a sign up of their own, or if they wanted to purchase a sign from the water company, which would be consistent with the signs around town.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I mean, there's certainly nothing stopping any citizen from putting up a sign of their own. But if it's gonna have the Colonial Water Company logo on it, we would certainly want to see that first before there's any such mark of the companies on it. However, you know, if we want to start some sort of coalition with individual homeowners to put up the same sign that we would be putting up, I think that we would be certainly open to having a further discussion on that and how we would be able to mitigate expense on that type of signage for individual homeowners. And question number, remind one more time, just I'm having that question again.
John, number 3.
I couldn't hear what he was saying, Bob. But 1 and 2 are perfectly fine. The number 3 was with regards to other towns and fines for non-compliance. Is there any, from Colonial side, can you give us suggestions, ideas, a sense of what other towns are doing that are in this predicament?
At this moment, I don't have direct, direct numbers that are being utilized by other towns. You know, there are individual towns that have their own ordinances in place that they are able to go ahead and assess. You know, a fine when somebody is irrigating outside of normal hours or out of the granted hours. Again, you know, in conjunction with the town, we'd be happy to perform some due diligence on that, and we can certainly report back to you on what we find in the Commonwealth for some other parameters that some of the other towns are using.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Robin?
Hi, Nick. Thanks for attending the meeting. One of the things that I would suggest, I noticed you have recently updated your website, but it would be great if maybe you put some of the water restrictions, you know, easily, so that you can easily see them on your website, so that it's easy for people to link to that. I think that would be helpful. I find more and more people are going to websites to get information. And then, you know, yeah, and then perhaps we could have you attend one of the next water resource committee meetings, and they can just share with you some of the great things that they've done with respect to educating the town about water conservation, and specifically about the fact that, you know, right now, according to Massachusetts, we're still experiencing drought conditions, so that people should be cognizant of that, because we all, after all, we're all tapping the same aquifer. So I think it would be great, and maybe we could coordinate through Chris getting you to that meeting. They've really done some great work, and I agree with Carol. It makes sense to coordinate the effort and have one message.
Oh, agreed. And just as far as your comment on the restrictions, we can certainly put that up on the homepage. So it's right from the center. We can certainly make that correction. And then, yeah, as far as attending a water study committee meeting, I would certainly be happy to do so. And it may be worthwhile in coordinating efforts. It may be worthwhile. There is literature that the water study committee has that they would be willing to share with us. We could certainly put it in as bill inserts as well. So it just kind of furthers that partnership.
Okay, that sounds great. So we appreciate that. We think it makes sense to have, you know, one message that we send to the whole town. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Robin. So I'm gonna second Robin's motion, and I think that a lot of the work that you guys would do for the town needs to be coordinated with the Water Resources Committee, because as Robin has said, they have just done a tremendous amount of work, particularly around education. That would really, I think, be close to a home run for the town if we can get you and the Water Resources Committee working together. I think that would be just terrific. And Chris, I'm assuming that sign location is something that is discussed with you and agreed. How does that work?
So as long as, so Nick shared with us, as he mentioned, and it's in the board's packets, some locations. Once they firm those up, Bobby Tosi will work with Nick and their contractor or whoever installs the sign, just to make sure that they're in compliance with the town's street bylaws. So that they're not at the corner of someone's driveway or obstructing a right of way, but that they again fall within the town's bylaw. And other than that, they just Colonial or the contractor will put them right in the ground.
Okay. Nick, do you have more to say? No, okay, because you raised your hand. I didn't know.
May I
Okay,
just
Jerry.
suggest that the Water Resource Committee has a list of where we're putting our signs. So I suggest that this get coordinated before anybody puts up their signs. And that'll
Okay.
be before our next meeting.
Again, Robert, can I speak to this, please?
Yes,
Since I
go
am the
ahead.
chair of that committee.
Yes.
My first question is this, and that goes to the issue of a consistent message, which I'm sure we do want. And that is Colonial last year, and from what I just heard this year, will be presenting a period of water restrictive use from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. I believe that's what was said. I would point out that last year, and again this year, the Water Resource Committee, as directed by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection and as presented in the proclamation by the Secretary of the Commonwealth, there is a dramatically different message and period of restriction. It is not as was presented by Colonial. Now, I'm not saying Colonial can't do what they want, but the difficulty will be that there will be inconsistent messaging, as there was last year. Secondly, as to signage, Bob Tosi and I were working that out this morning. We will be doing more work on that tomorrow. I certainly would love to see the templates that Colonial is intending to use for signage. I don't want to be inconsistent in the messaging. We are going to reuse what we had. We're going to go to a more reflective sign, and we will have more signage. So again, just to summarize, I think it would be best if we, as a governmental entity and one responsive to the state government and its message, provide a consistent message through the whole town.
Yes, Jerry, I think we agree, and which is why we're trying to point Colonial Water and the Water Resources Committee to sort of work together. And I think that's an important step, and it just
And if you would give Nick my contact information, I would greatly appreciate it, because I certainly think we could work together very well on this.
Well, we'll see. And I'm gonna, to make sure all this gets coordinated, I'm gonna put that on Chris Dwelly's plate to make sure that the coordination efforts take place. And he's smiling, so I know he's really anxious to get this going. All right. So I'm going to make a motion. I move to approve posting of Colonial Water signage as presented regarding water use and conservation efforts.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor, aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
So Bob, do you want to amend that motion? Because I think we also agreed that there should be coordination of effort first.
Yeah,
So-
I presume that the coordination would take place. I don't know if I need to make that explicit in the motion. But if you prefer that, I move to approve posting of Colonial Water signage as discussed and agreed with the Water Resources Committee regarding water use and conservation efforts. Is that better?
Do you want to add under the guidance of Chris?
Nah, he has too much to do. I have full confidence in who's on the Water Resources Committee and the company, so I think they can handle it. I'm not worried about that.
Robin, are you satisfied with the language?
Yep. So I'll
I-
second that if you
Okay.
need another second.
All right,
Or I can just say I'm in favor. I'm not sure where we are.
whatever. You made I made the motion, you seconded it. All in favor, I, Bob Sprant.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Thank you all. Thanks, Nick. Are you gonna stick around?
I believe I have another bullet point too.
I think you have one tattoo. Yeah, I was just gonna make sure. Okay. Chris, this is for you.
I will just punt that right back to Nick so that Nick can talk to the board this evening about New England Water Company's future plans.
All right, so before Nick starts, I'm going to say the summary is Aquarian Company and New England Service Company have entered into a definitive agreement whereby Aquarian will acquire New England Service Company. And Nick will provide the background information on the how's that? Was that okay?
That's a perfect introduction.
Go ahead, Nick. You got the floor.
All right. So yeah, no. So I appreciate it. So just as you just mentioned, the New England Service Company Board of Directors met this past Wednesday, so a week ago. Yesterday, and they approved to enter into this definitive agreement with Aquarian Water Company. And basically, what it is Aquarian would be acquiring the New England Service Company, which is a holding company of 4 regulated water utilities, Valley Water Systems in California, Colonial Water Company and Mountain Water Systems in Massachusetts, and then Abenaki Water Company in New Hampshire. Altogether, it's roughly 10,000 regulated customers. And then Aquarian would also be acquiring all the unregulated contracts, New England Service Company, as well as the real estate. So what this basically means is there's a couple different items that we still have to go through in order for the deal to transact. First and foremost, we need regulatory approval from the 3 regulatory bodies that oversee the subsidiaries. So that would be the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities, the Connecticut Public Utility Regulatory Authority, which is PURA, as well as the New Hampshire Public Utility Commission, or the PUC. Connecticut PURA has really the governing body over the transaction, or the proposed transaction, as New England Service Company and Aquarian are both incorporating Connecticut. So that's one item. Second item would be because New England Service Company is a publicly traded company, it does require 2/3 shareholder approval in order for the deal to transact. So we would be soliciting those proxies to our shareholders likely in the next 45 to 60 days. And then at that point, we would tally up the votes. And as long as we have 2/3 approval there, that we would cross that hurdle, and then it would be left on the regulatory approval, which by statute is up to a 200-day timeline to make such approval. So it basically puts us toward the end of Q4.
Okay. So your vote should be done by the end of June or something like that, and then the state takes over after that for.
Correct. Yeah, we're targeting toward the end of June. We would have our shareholder vote. This is a swift review by the SEC, which we believe should be done relatively quickly, considering the size of New England Service Company. Just to put it in perspective, our market cap is about 20 million. Aquarian is a wholly owned subsidiary of Eversource, and Eversource is a market cap of about 32 billion. So typically, when the deals are that small for the acquirer, it's typically a pretty swift judgment from the SEC.
And so I assume that there'll be continuing service, et cetera, et cetera. Our residents don't have to worry about this merger in any way, shape, or form affecting performance, customer service, or any of that.
Yeah, as far as service goes, it should be seamless. From a face-to-face interaction that you see with our operators, and the company as a whole, all employees are retaining their employment. There is no termination of any employment with this. We were very clear on that, and that's written right into the merger agreement. And then as far as our employees go that are out in the field, they're in Dover. We have Josh DeSantis and Chris Lane that we see on a day-to-day basis. And then Dave Candeas comes out as needed. He's more predominantly in Plymouth at this point. But you would not see a change in those faces. If anything, you would see additional faces coming from Aquarian. They certainly have significantly more resources, both financially, technologically, and really, subject matter than New England Service Company is able to afford, just given size is really what it boils down to. So we would certainly suspect that the quality of service would do nothing other than increase even more than what we're able to provide.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I do think that at a certain point, size does have its advantages, as long as you avoid the bureaucratic downside of size, but you're still relatively small company. So I guess congratulations. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I guess from a board standpoint, really we have to look out for all of our stakeholders, right? So our customers, our employees, our shareholders. We view this as a win for all our constituencies. Where from a customer standpoint, the quality of service is certainly going to maintain, and our full expectations is that it's only going to be enhanced, whether through technology, whether through further expertise, and certainly additional resources, both financially and in the field. From our employee standpoint, they're now being given the opportunity to enter into a significantly larger company that provides them much more training opportunity and much more growth from a career standpoint. And then from a shareholder standpoint, you can read the terms of the agreement. So from a shareholder standpoint, there's been value that's been driven by the deal.
Thank you, John.
So Nick, just a couple of things. I think I'm sure you remember this from last summer. Bob, Robin, and I are all Colonial Water customers. We are, we are all in everything that we've done and you've done as a company, and we as the board, and both we wear the hats of the executive branch and we wear the hats of customers. So I'll ask you a question that is both from the customer standpoint and certainly from the Board of Selectmen standpoint. What's the benefit? What's the benefit for us as the board for you to go through this? What's the benefit for the customer? And I know you're going to say you mentioned some of these things with the economy of scale and the economy of size. I guess I'll cut right to the chase and I'll ask you the same thing that a couple of other people on this call this evening and on calls that you've attended in the past will ask. One is how can a larger company be more impactful to limit over pumping, which over pumping is overconsumption, number one. And number two is another person on this call this evening would ask about the impact of the regulatory bodies that you've mentioned, and what will they say with regards to this next step of yours going forward?
Sure. I can certainly provide answers to the second question much more easily than I can to the first question. So the first question I can certainly touch upon, but to sit here and definitively say what Aquarian will do differently is not really my place to state how they're going to run their business. Just from you mentioned the economies of scale, which was certainly mentioned, or I mentioned, certainly the significant resources that they bring to the table, both from a capital standpoint, from a technology standpoint, And then again, from a personnel standpoint, are significant versus what New England Service Company and Colonial Water is able to provide. One item that we talked about or that you mentioned was over pumping. I would certainly point to the fact that Aquarian has instituted a conservation program in its southeastern and southwestern territory of Connecticut, really like Fairfield County area, in which don't hold me to these numbers because again, it's not my company, but I've done obviously a decent amount of due diligence through those conservation efforts. It saved about 500 million gallons of water from prior to inception to inception, and they're looking and they are planning to implement that conservation statewide again in 2021. So that in and of itself is a significant undertaking with the Connecticut DPH and Connecticut DEEP here that would be governing bodies over conservation, as well as the aquifers really that DEP is over in Massachusetts. So significant resources are within Aquarian, and obviously the holding company of Eversource to be able to provide toward meeting those expectations and goals that Dover has, alongside all the other, towns and cities that Aquarian operates in. I hope I answered your question. As far as the regulatory bodies go, there are a set of criteria that the DPU specifically has within any application to acquire. So with the DPU, I believe it's a standards that you have to be able to illustrate as to why it is why the deal should be consummated and why it's in the public good. For instance, a couple of those standards certainly discuss the loss of any employment, that you're not going to have negative employment because of this. There is a criteria that relates around greenhouse emissions, so certainly toward the benefit of the environment. There is another standard that needs to be met that illustrates cost savings, and then ultimately that trickles down to all of the customers and the ratepayers. So there are these sets of standards that are in place that in that application that will be filed with the DPU, as well as with Connecticut Pura. Connecticut Pura has a much more stringent set of criteria that the acquirer, being Aquarian, needs to be able to present. Both philosophically and obviously providing hard data as to how they're going to meet that criteria. And again, that criteria to be met is all in the name of the public good as to why a transaction is warranted.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing.
Robin?
I would just say if you go and take a look at Aquarian's website, everything that Nick is saying, they have a lot of conservation efforts, a lot of really good literature, a lot of things that they're doing to conserve water, both in Connecticut and Massachusetts. So I think, as Nick had mentioned, their philosophy about water conservation and that of the town of Dover is one and the same. So I think it will be a really great relationship.
Just to mention just piggybacking on Robin's point there, it's probably right on the homepage. I'm sure it is. Their tagline is stewards of, stewards of the environment. So that is front and center for Aquarian. Again, I don't want to put words in Aquarian's mouth, but I believe it's right there front and center on the homepage. And obviously we've had discussions through due diligence regarding all of our systems in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, and where we stand with our WMAs and our permits, our withdrawal allowances, and potential additional capacity that we have been. They're fully aware. They understand where we sit. They understand kind of our situation or, the concerns that Dover has with, with the consumption. And, going back to the conservation efforts that they have, I believe that is that's a pretty strong range we may have, especially, in particular with the water committee and with the concerns that the town has.
So thanks, Nick. I hope as this thing goes forward, we get an opportunity to meet with some of the representatives of the aquarium. That'd be a good way to get the ball rolling, and look forward to that. And thanks for the presentation.
Absolutely. And I think that would be something that Chris, you and I could certainly set up a time when, a representative, a couple representatives of Aquarian could certainly jump on a call here. I do have a meeting set up with representatives there, as well as Plainville, Connecticut, which is where our largest system is, with the town manager. So, we're certainly going to be doing the rodeo show there of making sure that everybody has introductions and we all know who the players are. So we can certainly get that set up.
Terrific. Thank you. We're going to move on. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Bye. Item
Take
1.
care. Thank you, guys.
June 12th, 2021 special town meeting planning discussion. It's on my nickel. So this is hopefully really pretty brief. Ford, I'm standing in for Ford. Ford has asked me to try to help coordinate the different meetings that would have to take place between presumably post May 1st and pre-June 12th to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed relative to having the building committee make presentations to the board of, not to the Board of Selectmen, but to the Capital Budget Committee for their comments and hopefully recommendation, as well as to the Warrant Committee for their comments and recommendations as preparatory steps to the June 12th town meeting. And I'm assuming we will have in that the moderators meeting, but I don't think it's been traditional for presentations to take place at the moderators meeting. So I don't think Ford and the Capital Budget and the Building Committee have to attend the moderators meeting. I think it's more important for the Capital Budget and the Warrant Committee. And I was at the Warrant Committee meeting last night and talked with Gordon and the Warrant Committee members about some of the things. So we've already covered that base. But Ford will be coming to you guys looking for dates to be able to get that done. And what I'm not clear about is the amount of lead time, for example, that Warrant Committee needs to go through the presentation, make their recommendations, and then presumably get something like an equivalent blue book or a blue sheet, I don't know, out to the public so everybody can be informed. And I just want to make sure that everybody who has been engaged in trying to pull together this June 12th meeting has an opportunity to be heard here tonight, and then we'll just keep rolling forward. Jim, you want to start if you have any questions? Jim? You good? Okay. Gordon, I'm assuming you're Warrant Committee?
Yeah, that's me, Bob. This is Gordon. Yeah, no, I have nothing to add right now.
So I'll just have Ford work with you to set up a date for your committee.
Yep, that would be great.
Okay. Barry, same thing with the Capital Budget Committee? Well, either Barry didn't hear me or he has difficulty undoing the mute. So for you guys to know, the building committee now expects to have relatively firm cost numbers for the two options. by either the end of April or the first week in May. And I'm presuming that that would be critical for them to have before they meet with either the Capital Budget Committee or the Warrant Committee. So I tended to, when I was writing notes for tonight, I thought it would have to be, probably no later than May 15th to meet with Warrant Committee. But Gordon, I don't know what your timeline is to have things ready to go out to the public. So if there's more time than May 15th, just let us know. Or is May a good target?
Yeah, I think certainly after May 1st. So yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay. Felicia, is there anything I need to worry about as Ford? Felicia, is there anything I need to worry about from the town clerk's perspective?
Not yet, but I'll let you know.
Well, I'm definitely sure you'll let me know. Dave, do you have anything that I might have missed that needs to be thought about?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Okay. So then that would end the discussion then. So I'm going to make sure that Ford touches base with Barry and Gordon and have those boxes checked, hopefully by May 15th. Thank you. Item 1.4, review and finalize May 1, 2021 annual town meeting warrant article motions. Now we're going to the town meeting rather than the special town meeting. Mr. Dwelly.
Thanks, Bob. With the moderators meeting for the annual town meeting scheduled for next Thursday evening, Jim and I and Felicia had an opportunity to speak this week to review the motions and talk a little bit about how we can consolidate some motions into a consent agenda or multiple consent agendas to help move the meeting along and make it a little bit more efficient. So before the board in your packet is the deck of motions that is complete. You'll see in there the various consent agendas. I'll just quickly run over those for you. The first is we're combining the two dismissed articles that were withdrawn after the warrant was produced. That's the regional schools capital request, which they're funding with their own E&D. And the other is the supplemental appropriation article for the current fiscal year, which we will not need. And then we've combined, in speaking with Jim, we've combined essentially two sets of articles, similar articles together. So the first is Articles 6, 7, and 9. These are the recurring special articles that make relatively small dollar contributions to certain funds. So the Conservation Fund, the Unemployment Fund, and the Police Sick Bank Employment Fund. And then the second set that we combined are the two Board of Assessor articles related to the senior tax relief. So that's really a summary of the motions. And other than that, I don't have anything else to add. I guess the only thing I would say is that plan to package these up and send these out to all the stakeholders before next week's moderators meeting. So that includes the warrant committee, I believe capital budget committee. There's a whole host of folks that are on a list that Mona has. So make sure that everyone gets those in advance of next Thursday's meeting.
John, any comments? Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. And thanks to Dave and to Jim, for the time and the effort and the energy to put all this together. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other people that need to be mentioned, and they will probably do that. But this is a big help. This is something that we've been spending a lot of time on in the hopes of making the meeting as efficient, effective, safe as possible, getting everybody there the most bang for their buck and their most in the least amount of time to have the highest safety and efficacy available. So I just hope people are realizing how much time and energy and effort is going into all of these things in the hopes of trying to mitigate controversy, define controversy, work together with all the boards so that there are no controversies, and to do this in the most safe, effective manner possible. So thank you all for the time to do this.
Thanks, thanks, John. Robin?
I don't have anything to add.
Jim, you good?
Yeah, the only thing I would ask is that everybody who will be presenting or speaking at town meeting on behalf of the articles attend the moderators meeting next week, so that we can just plan who's going to be talking and how long they're going to be talking, with an emphasis on keeping it short so that we're able to get people in and out as quickly as possible and as safely as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I've had the same sort of question as I went through all of the articles, and I'm going, oh, who's going to talk about this? Who's going to talk about that? And Robin and John both said I can't talk about any of it because I'm way too long-winded. So
Jim, is this a good time to mention that Dave Haviland's bell will have a 40-second limit? It used to have a 2-minute. Now we're reducing that as we reduce the quorum to 40 seconds.
I've been told that I can't reduce the time to any less than it would take me to compose a semi-coherent thought. So we have to keep it at 2 minutes.
Dave is going to use a siren from your ambulance, John. He's giving up on it.
It does come with electricity this year.
You're going to use the electricity that was in the air last year.
Yeah, that's right.
The threat of thunder and lightning. Thank you both.
Felicia, comments?
All good.
All right, thank you. All right, then I'm going to move on to 1.5. Approve and execute May 17th, 2021 town election warrant. Mr. Dwelly.
Thanks, Bob. The title pretty much says it all. So this year's election warrant is really just that, just the various elected positions that are up this year. So each year the board votes to accept this election warrant to make it official.
All right, we could probably handle it. I move to approve May 17th, 2021 town election warrant.
I second, with thanks to everyone involved.
All in favor, aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
All right, good. Item 1.6, pre-May 1, 2021 annual town meeting presentation. Mr. Dweller, you're earning your big bucks tonight.
I hope so, because this is going to be a long one. So Kate's going to bring up a presentation, and I'll just give a little bit of context again for everyone. So as we did last year at the board's request, we put together a handful of slides that really summarized each warrant article, and the thought being that this is a good opportunity, both in this forum for residents to be able to get a preview of all of the articles that will be on the warrant for town meeting, as well as having an additional resource available to them at any point through the website. So this is a nice, I view this as a nice complementary set of materials to the Blue Book and certainly to the official warrant that's issued. And before I jump in, I will just make a plug again that for anyone out there watching or listening, this slide deck, along with the warrant and the Blue Book and anything you'd ever need for town meeting, can be found on the town's website at doverma.gov, right on the homepage. If you scroll down, you'll see a section that says town meeting, and that's where all this information can be found. So this will be an important resource, certainly for folks leading up to town meeting, but I think it'll also be helpful during town meeting for people to bring up if they've got questions or just kind of want to refresh themselves on each particular article. So we've got 25 articles for this year's annual town meeting, a little bit more than last year's consolidated or condensed town meeting. So we'll see if we get it all done in 20 minutes or 40 minutes like we did last year. So the first article I skip over in this is just because it's the committee report, the committee town reports. So Article 2, salaries for elected officials. So these they don't really change except for the one elected official who is considered a full-time staff member, which is the town clerk, who is eligible for the town's cost of living adjustments, as well as is compensated through the town's salary schedule. These costs are reflected within the bottom line operating budget, which is Article 4. The next article is Article 3, and this is the town's revolving funds. And these funds are essentially set up that allow the town to take money in for licenses and permits, services, for example, and then to be able to use those funds and expend them either in the current year or in a future year. And so revolving funds, I think it's important to note that they're, again, funded by user-generated fees, and they do not impact the tax rate. It's just a good way of accounting for finances related to specific services.
And Chris, amounts that come in excess of the revolving fund amount, if they're not designated for a certain expense, then are they returned to free cash?
Nope. So revolving funds are revolving.
Okay.
So they accrue a balance year over year, which is why we establish them, or why communities establish them, so that any excess funds or any additional funds aren't cashed out to free cash to the general fund. They're retained in that particular entity so that they continue to spend that in years forward. The amounts you see here are the limits of what each revolving fund can spend in that particular year.
Okay, all right.
That's a great question, though. Article 4 is the operating budget. This is the same presentation that we gave the board about a month or so ago. I'll just quickly run through. Last year, during COVID times, again, kudos to the Board of Selectmen and the Warrant Committee and Capital Budget Committee and everyone who participates in building a budget. We're able to continue operations, further a lot of the community's goals, and we're able to do so while keeping the tax rate, in my opinion, stable. We closed the year out with just a 5-cent year over year tax increase, which was great. On the next slide, Kate, is the actual FY22 operating budget that's presented. This is just a summary of our revenues this year with our tax levy, with new growth, and with our local receipts. We've got an estimated total growth around just shy of $1.5 million available to us to pay for the things that we need to pay for. The next slide, Kate.
And so, Chris, I think when you go over that slide, you should emphasize that we did not maximize the levy this year, which is also a way to stabilize the tax rate.
That's a great point. And a correct point.
Right.
Here's a summary of just the major expenditures or major cost changes. I really like to highlight these separately for folks. So on the side are your required assessments, things like paying for the schools, town wages, and liability and health insurance. And then on the right side are the new cost increases for the year. The top half of that table represents actually requests that were made in FY21, but we delayed as a result of COVID. And then the bottom of that table reflects the new asks for FY22, all centered around people to be able to really bolster our service delivery in town. Next slide. is just a highlight of the major assessments. These are a lot of your major budget drivers. The thing that I would highlight here is that they are all really great with really year over year low increases for the school, for retirement, which is really great. The one that has the major increase is the health insurance. And on the next slide, Kate, the Board of Selectmen had decided to use that excess to pay off its current liability for the town's retiree health insurance and life insurance costs. So as long as everything stays the same, that contribution will exhaust the town's OPEB liability beyond our annual contributions. One of the first, or one of the few, I should say, in the Commonwealth to be able to do so. And so I think that's also a testament, certainly, to the board's financial planning related to OPEB and the broader financial planning of the community. On the next slide is just a summary that the operating budget, as Robin mentioned, this one as well doesn't tax to the full 2.5%. It's about $800,000 in unused levy capacity, provides for all of our essential town services, really continues to move the needle on community goals in the area of customer service and modernization, and fully funds, again, all of our other contractual obligations and our capital improvement plan. Next slide, Kate. And then the year-over-year operating budget summary. I think this is an impactful slide to show that the year-over-year operating budget from last year versus the proposed budget is less than 1%. All right. Next slide is the capital budget. This just summarizes the capital requests that were included in the town's 5-year capital improvement plan and that were vetted by and voted on and endorsed by the capital budget committee. There's quite a bit of a difference in overall costs between last year and this year for the capital budget, but that is essentially entirely a result of the big townhouse roof project. And that project will actually be funded with free cash. So there's about approximately $300,000 that'll be used within the levy to pay for this year's recurring capital. Article 6 is that special recurring article that I had mentioned. One of those special recurring articles that I mentioned, and this is to appropriate for unemployment compensation. Typically, every year we review this account and we typically top it off with $10,000. Given the unknowns of unemployment, this allows us to be able to have funds available to us when we need to pay, unemployment claims. Article 7 is the second of the third special recurring article that I'd mentioned. This is just for retiring police officers. Again, this just allows us to be able to have funds available to us when officers retire out. We are contractually obligated to pay for their accumulated sick leave upon retirement. And again, this year, that appropriation request is $10,000. Article 8 allows the town to spend the state's Chapter 90 funds, which are funds that are dedicated for roadway and similar road repair. Dover received $278,000 for FY21, and that is right around the ballpark of what we receive annually. It's based on road miles and then a formula that the state puts together. Article 9 is the third and final of those special recurring articles that I've mentioned. This is to the Conservation Fund, and this is to pay for conservation-related activities. And the Conservation Commission has requested the annual amount that is typically requested, which is $25,000. Article 10 is the Capital Stabilization Fund. And actually, Robin, if you don't mind, can I put you on the spot and take a water break and let you quickly summarize the capital stabilization fund. I did take some liberties to consolidate the deck just in the interest of time. So I really just focused on the overview of it. But
Right, so I noticed that, and I think you did a good job summarizing it. And so, you know, I think our free cash strategy is really a cornerstone of our financial reforms in Dover. And in 2019, we began those efforts. And what we were really focusing on was stabilizing the tax rate. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have, you know, unintended peaks to the tax rate due to returns of free cash, which are really rebates. And so we really looked at the financial. So we took a much longer term view of the financial picture for the town of Dover. And we also looked at why our free cash balance kept growing and what was contributing to that. And we took a multi-pronged approach to lowering the growth in the tax rate, lowering the growth in our free cash balance or our cash reserves balance. And by doing all of that, you know, it really equals stabilizing the tax rate. So the creation of these capital stabilization fund, which is a warrant article this year, is one of those items. And by creating this capital stabilization fund, really what we are saying is every year we know we have capital that we need to replace. So let's start saving for that now, and let's save for that in an account that can only be used for capital. So we believe that by doing this, we are creating financial or fiscal discipline, as well as transparency to the town. And also it allows us to achieve our goal, which again is to stabilize the tax rate. So plan for everything we know we can plan for, begin to save for those items that we know we're going to have to spend. By doing this, you don't have surprises and you don't have unnecessary spikes in the tax rate to fund things that you should have been saving for over time.
thank you. All right, the next Article 11, as mentioned, will be dismissed at town meeting. Article 12 is for one-time projects. And this is, I won't put you on the spot again, Robin. As we talk about water and the high priority that and the instrumental resource that water is, certainly to everyone in the world and in Dover, there's a recognition from the Board of Selectmen to take a holistic view at all things water in Dover. And really assess the town's current makeup and to look for recommendations on how the town can ensure that we have a reliable and predictable source of water moving forward. So that's this effort. This is, I would say, really a continuation of the existing efforts that have occurred in town. Most recently, the ones we heard about earlier today with the water quality and quantity study and the education efforts. Article 13 is for unpaid bills. This allows us to pay for bills from prior years. Typically what happens is we'll get an invoice after the fiscal year closes and we're legally not allowed to pay that bill. So it's got to carry over to the next year. We have two, they total just under $1,600. Article 14 is the 2020 supplemental appropriations. As I mentioned, will also be dismissed at Saturday as well. The next article, you can keep going, is 15, which is from the planning board. Really is just allows or updates the town's existing ADU or accessory apartment and unit bylaw. And what it does is it just clarifies the language as it relates to the permitting process for ADUs. So you can keep going through, Kate. Article 16 is state statute allows residents of a certain age to defer their property taxes each year. But by default, having that privilege comes with an interest. Interest accrues on that deferral. The default is 8%, which to some can certainly be high and can compound the financial hardship that some might experience. So this is certainly a senior tax relief effort, which is a big goal of the boards, and the Board of Assessors has put this forward. This is from last year, and they're recommending that the town cut that interest rate in half, and so that the deferral rate would be 4% rather than 8%. And I want to just make a quick note, the link there and on this next slide highlights a lot of the great senior tax programs that the town offers presently. Similar to the deferral, there's also a tax exemption, which takes off an amount of money from the overall property tax bill each year for individuals of a certain age. It's presently a $1,000 exemption, and the Board of Assessors are recommending that the town increase that to $2,000. Presently, we have, I think it's less than half a dozen individuals who take advantage of this benefit. Article 18 is the third of and final of our senior tax relief efforts. This is also a carryover from last year. I won't go through each slide. There's a few here, but to summarize, this state statute, if adopted by the town, allows town residents, when they pay their property tax bills, to be able to voluntarily contribute any amount of money that they would like to a special dedicated fund that would fund tax relief for elderly and disabled residents. What's nice about this article that's unlike the prior two is that there aren't state parameters around this, is that a local committee is established of Dover residents appointed by the Board of Selectmen that essentially establish the parameters for those seeking relief. So you can adjust the threshold to be able to accommodate individuals in town rather than just using a blanket threshold that the state produces. So it provides you with a little bit more flexibility. You can keep going through, Kate. Yeah. Article 19 is one of the recommendations that came out of the Department of Revenue's financial management review that was conducted of the town in what year was it? It was 2018. Yeah, in 2018, GASB, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, changed the requirements for all OPEB trust funds. Dover had established its trust fund back in 2009. Which was really forward thinking. And all this article does is bring the town's OPEB trust fund essentially into compliance with the new GASB standards. The next article, Article 20, is an amendment to the cemetery bylaws. The Cemetery Commission last year did a thorough review of their bylaws and wanted to, similar to the ADU Planning Board article, wanted to make a few clarifying edits to their language, which are summarized here on this slide. The link here, which is also under the town meeting link, has the full text of the changes that they are proposing. But again, they are clarifying in nature. Article 21 allows the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Assessors to enter into a pilot or payment in lieu of taxes agreement with Select Energy, which is a solar energy company that has proposed solar roof-mounted solar array at the highway garage. This article is required for the town to enter into a pilot if the Board of Selectmen decide and determine that they want to move forward with the solar project at the highway garage. The pilot essentially guarantees, separate from the energy savings that's generated from the project, the pilot guarantees an additional stream of money to the community for a 20-year period, because prior to a change in the state statute that happened last week, most solar arrays of this magnitude were not able to be taxed as personal property. So it was typically lost revenue for the community, which is why communities enter into pilot agreements instead. Article 22 amends our dog bylaw. This came from the town's animal control officer and is supported by the police chief and our town clerk. It does two things. The first is the town's bylaw fee schedule was out of date. It hadn't been updated for a few decades. So the first is to bring the fee schedule in alignment with the prevailing state statute. And then while the request or the recommendation was to update that fee schedule to match the state statute, there was also a recommendation made to incorporate some other provisions that are normally found in these bylaws that require certain things like registered dog owners notifying the town clerk when change of ownership occurs, explicitly requiring rabies vaccines, and adding an overall exception for service dogs. Article 23 is wireless service providers lease authorization. There is a big monopole telecommunications tower behind the highway garage. That monopole provides cell coverage, hopefully provides cell coverage to almost everybody in town. All of the major providers are on it. It was erected probably 25 years ago. And at the time, the town had entered into 20-year leases with these four companies. They're going to expire in the next few years. And this article allows the Board of Selectmen to essentially enter into additional long-term leases with these companies, considered essentially an extension of the existing leases, which would otherwise expire if we did not have this authorization. And Article 24 is a citizen's petition, which is a roadway acceptance. And the roadway acceptance is Stagecoach Lane. And this was a carryover from last year as well. The last article, which I do not have a slide for, is the free cash to reduce the tax rate. And the Board of Selectmen at their last meeting, along with the warrant committee, discussed this article and had agreed upon $1.9 million being used free cash to reduce the tax rate. That 1.9, a portion of that includes, or I should say a majority of that includes the school circuit breaker that the town pays for upfront each year and then sends back to the taxpayers in the form of free cash after the year is closed out. That is it.
Thank you, Chris. That was well done. John, you have a comment or a question?
None. No comments, no question. Everything was perfectly done, Chris.
I wouldn't go that far, but it was well done. Robin?
I thought it was a really great summary.
Okay. Any comments from folks on the Zoom?
Our participation has dropped since the beginning of the evening.
That's because people have to eat dinner. Everybody else is like really hungry. Jim's put a bib on. He's so hungry. He's trying to give me a hint.
Everyone left has heard this now 20 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, 1.7. No more fooling around. Board of Selectmen updates. John, anything?
No, sir.
Robin, anything?
No, I mean, I did attend the Water Resource Committee meeting on Wednesday morning. You know, again, I think they're doing some really good work with respect to information for conservation. And I think it does make a lot of sense to coordinate efforts with Colonial, so we have one message to the entire town.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's right. The only thing on Carol is what I had mentioned earlier, that they're working on finalizing their cost estimates, and they expect to have that either the end of this month or early May. Any comments on the upcoming agendas? John?
No, for next week, Bob. No, I just
Next
everything
week
looks
is
fine.
Jim's show. He has to do all the work.
Next week is Jim.
Then we take it over again back in May. It'll be nicer then. All right, 1.8. Mr. Dwelly, back to you. Town administrator updates.
I guess just two quick things. The first is we've got a free cash number certified for the year, which is fantastic. That came in at about just shy of $12 million for a balance. So the finance team is working on essentially a one-page breakout for the board and for the warrant committee and for others about what contributed to that amount, and what we will do moving forward now that we're getting up to speed and we're putting a lot of pieces in place along with the finance team, along with the VADAR system, is to be able to provide not only that free cash number, but also the breakdown for policymakers in the fall at the beginning of the budget season, so that you know before you go into the budget season and set your guidance how the prior year ended up, what your free cash balance is, how free cash was accrued, so that you can incorporate that into your decision making earlier in the process rather than later in the process. And then the last thing is I just wanted to mention that there's if anyone watches Dexter, I don't, but their production company reached out to us this week. They are going to be filming at a private residence on the second week of June. And they just wanted to check in, reassure us that they'd pull all the necessary permits that they needed to, if they needed any permits, as well as police detail. They did mention at the time that they might be interested in using potentially a town lot for parking. If they do, obviously that needs to come before the board and we need to enter into an agreement with them. But I just wanted to update you that there'll be a film crew in town in June. And if they do decide to use some town property, that'll certainly come before you. But I think that's probably the most exciting thing I have to share this evening. So I'll leave it at that.
Is this, Chris, is this Robin's big chance?
It could be.
Is this the one she's been waiting for? I think it is. Personally,
Dexter.
I don't know what Dexter is. I don't think
It's supposed to be a really good show, but I think it's really violent.
Chris, is this the one where the guy is the comedian turned hitman or something like that?
Honestly, I have no idea. I don't watch. I've heard of it. I don't watch it. I haven't looked it up.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get
John, it's all about the mysterious death of a selectman in small New England town.
Robin, this is your big chance. Oh, this is it.
Oh, Bob, actually, there is. I'm sorry, not to ruin a good time. But so we did a pre-town meeting presentation this evening. I had tentatively scheduled one. It's not on the books for sometime next week, but I guess I'd ask the board if you think that's a worthwhile endeavor, or if you think the resources online and what's been done is adequate heading into May 1st.
I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I'm not sure how many people will attend, but I think making it available and publicizing it, through social media, letting people know is worthwhile, and we'll see how many people we get.
So another evening one or a daily or a midday one?
Whatever the board thinks makes the most sense, maybe a midday one might, mix things up a little bit and provide an opportunity for folks to attend who otherwise wouldn't be able to.
Chris,
I'm
I
sorry.
tend to agree that it's a good thing. I purposefully tried to attend the most recent midday one that Ford did for the special town meeting, and there were only 12 attendees. So it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. Ford's committee puts in a lot of time and effort for this. I know that everyone we've done in the past, it's the same amount of preparation for these that you put in for town meeting for the presentations. So there's a lot of work involved. So I think they're a good idea. I'm always really just amazed at how few people attend these additional that we provide.
Yeah. Jim?
I'm just wondering if the Blue Book will be going out sometime, later this week, Chris, or early next week?
Yeah, I'd heard, I think is it Tuesday, right, Felicia? Do you know? I believe
Yeah,
it's Tuesday.
it was going to go out tomorrow, but it's going out Tuesday.
Okay. I'm just a thought, and this is really just a question. Do you think that there might be more interest in a presentation after the Blue Book went out? Would that spark maybe a little bit more curiosity? And if that's the case, would it make sense to wait until later next week or even the following week, the week right before town meeting? I don't know, but just throwing it out there for you guys to consider.
I think that's a really good point. I was thinking the Blue Book usually goes out on the 15th, so I was thinking it would go out today. But I agree. I think I think households know that the Blue Book has some relationship to town meeting. Whether they choose to attend town meeting or not is another story. But at least they know this little Blue Book relates to town meeting. So maybe if people were inclined to pick it up and check the website, or we could maybe put something catchy on there. If you want to learn, if you want the crib notes version of what's in your Blue Book, there's an information session, and see if we can get some people.
So you want to do it the last week, just like the 20th?
No, I think it makes sense. I think Jim made a really good point. I think it makes sense to wait until the Blue Books are mailed out and then see how many people we get. I think the presentation that Chris made tonight is really good, but I feel as though I am the wrong audience because I know what's in the Blue Book. So, I think it does help to be walked through it.
Yeah, I agree. It's just that for us, though, it's a matter of giving Chris which dates we would prefer. So if it goes out on Monday, or Tuesday, that's the 18th. And if people needed a week to look at it, you're looking at the next week, and so it could be any night that week prior to the meeting. I do think that one of the things that I would, if we're going to do this information session, I really think we have to be careful about the language. We tend to speak in language that most people don't understand. And when we're going through a lot of this stuff, it's going to be really important to make it as simple and as possible for people to understand what we're talking about. And I think you did a lot of that, but we just fall into sort of town jargon, and we just need to be mindful of that. I think it would be a great opportunity to sort of explain, a number of these things simply. And for that kind of thing too, I think you have to go up a level and reduce the number of slides and just highlight the main things that people would be concerned about. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of that last week, is that board, do you guys have any commitments that we need to know about? Go ahead, Jim.
Well, Thursday, I believe that last week will be, oh, I'm sorry, no, Monterey's meeting is next Thursday.
Yes, next
Right.
year. It's the following week, Jim.
Right, right.
We're not gonna let you get off the hook on that one, Jim.
No, I tried.
22nd.
Right.
But it would be the 29th would be the latest, I think, right? That'd be just the day before the town meeting. So maybe earlier in that week. Well, why don't you guys think about it and get Mona a couple of dates that we can work with. Chris, is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yep.
Okay. Then I'm going to move on. So C1 is the consent agenda. The following items are included on the consent agenda. Approve acceptance and expenditure of 2 Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital grants to the Council on Aging. $1,500 for 2 outside tents to be used as a gathering space and $4,000 for grab-and-go meals for seniors. Approve acceptance and expenditure of $500 Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital grant to the Park and Recreation Commission to help offset the cost of the Healthy Roster Computer Application Program. Approve acceptance and expenditure of a $2,687 Dover Cultural Council grant to the Park and Recreation Commission for a traveling public art display. Approve acceptance of artwork and number 5 Studios, Shaney Paras, to the Park and Recreation Commission. Approve March 11th, 2021 open session meeting minutes. Questions or comments, John?
None. I second.
I have to make the motion first. Robin?
I have no comments.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor, aye, Bob Springett?
Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Okay. So with that, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, John Jeffries.
Second? I'll second.
Robin.
Well, Bob just seconded. So
Yeah,
is somebody going to say all in favor? Then I'll say
Why
I,
did you
Robin
do that? What did
Hunter.
you say? What did you? All in favor? Aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Thank you all very much. I don't think it's going to be a great weekend, but if you get snippets of sunshine, maybe.
No, it is going to be a great weekend because according to the committee meeting that I attended, we're in a drought and this might make a little bit of a dent. So
Exactly.
you're going to have happy grass after this weekend.
Yeah, but happy grass needs to be mowed.
Yes.
Doesn't matter, Bob, it's happy grass.
All right. With that, have a great time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.